Tell me if this sounds familiar. Tonight, Congress has narrowly averted another government shutdown after passing a $1 trillion spending bill. However, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are none too pleased. Progressives livid about expansions to campaign financing, among other issues, while Tea Party folks furious that the GOP didn't use the bill to try to block Obama's moves on immigration and more. Who should be the most upset? And Mayor de Blasio facing the music after blowing off a funeral service for former Congressman Herman Badillo. Reports say the mayor hit the gym instead. Now, Badillo's widow speaking out. It's just the latest in a series of mishaps by the mayor. What we're going to ask tonight, is it his fault, or is he not just surrounded by the right folks? Plus, RFL is live in the nation's capital this weekend for a major rally against police violence. Tonight, we'll have a preview. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us. Tonight, we will begin in Washington, where congressional lawmakers, they have spared the country from a potential government shutdown, that after passing a $1.1 trillion spending bill. However, passage of the bill does not come without controversy. Once again, Congress goes down to the wire.
On this vote, the yeas are 2-6, 219. The nays are 206. The motion is adopted.
With little time left to spare, the House passed a $1.1 trillion bill to fund most of the government through next September, as well as avert a government shutdown.
My job tonight is to say thank you and Merry Christmas.
As Congress comes to an end, lawmakers scramble to cram into the 1,600-page bill their pet projects. There was something in there for everyone to dislike. The most controversial for many Democrats, a measure that would weaken some Wall Street regulations put in place after the 2008 financial meltdown.
All the opposite side has to do is to stop supporting a bill that would allow the biggest banks in America to rip off the people one more time.
The showdown over the spending bill prompted some unlikely alliances. Conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats joining together in opposition. And House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi squaring off against President Obama as well as Vice President Biden, who personally got involved trying to get Democrats to push this bill over the finish line.
This, by definition, was a compromise bill. This is what's produced when you have the divided government that the American people voted for.
All right, so with that, we get a taste of maybe what the next 2 years could look like. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and Republican Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann, who I venture to say have probably agreed on next to nothing over the years here, are two lawmakers from very different sides of the aisle who have been extremely vocal about the bill, both with their displeasure.
Here we are in the House being blackmailed to vote for an appropriations bill. I'm enormously disappointed that the White House feels that the only way they can get a bill is to go along with this, and that would be the only reason I think they would say they would sign such a bill. It's back to the same old Republican formula. Privatize the gain, nationalize the risk. You succeed, it's in your pocket. You fail, the taxpayer pays the bill. It's just not right.
The political establishment wanted full-on amnesty. They were going to get it one way or another. They wanted it all done before the new Senate was sworn in. But again, I think the main thing we need to know is this vote never, ever, ever in any parallel universe would have happened.
All right, now again here, quick primer, Democrats mad about a bunch of things, but most importantly over the expansion of campaign donation limits to political parties. Current deal, it would raise the ceiling 1,000% from current levels, from $32,000 to more than $320 grand. They're also livid, as you heard there from Nancy Pelosi, about a major change in Wall Street regulations. Well, remember what happened in 2008, right? Well, specifically those derivatives, some say caused the financial crisis in 2008. Well, the bill, it would allow big banks to engineer derivative trades so they could be insured by the FDIC, meaning potential losses would be paid for, you guessed it, by taxpayers. Now, remember, the Tea Party, they're not doing cartwheels either. They say the bill, it should have been blocking the president's recent actions on immigration. Now, it's the Senate's turn to weigh in, and they got to vote on the bill by midnight come tomorrow evening. All right, let's bring in our panel tonight. We're going to start off with Washington, then bring it closer to home. Shelley Mayer, a Democratic New York State Assemblywoman representing the terrific city of Yonkers. Michael Tobin, independent political consultant. T.J. McCormick, Republican consultant. And Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Let's start on the left here. And Assemblywoman, listen, sometimes I think there's theater, but in this case, I get what Pelosi's saying. My God, you put it to a national, referendum. Who in the public's going to say, oh, yeah, it's been a whole 6 years. Let's go back to the way it was before. There is no too big to fail. Do we learn nothing? How is that good fiscal policy? It's crazy.
Well, I don't think it was a matter of good fiscal policy. It was a matter of politics, and it was a matter of the majorities in both houses were in the room with the president's staff, and they did the bill. And the Democrats in the House were cut out of the process, and the principles they stand for, as you've articulated, and I happen to share most of them, were not in the bill, and in fact, they were eviscerated. The problem is, at the end of the day, the American people want a budget and they want government to go on. And so they don't like this refusal to come to an agreement, and I think that has to be on the table. People wanted the government to go on, and
I've heard that, Michael, that this is a victory for pragmatism, but it then begs the question. The president's got about a couple months here left until the new Congress comes in, and he's got no more majority in the Senate whatsoever. So the argument then begs, wait a second. Can you, in a soundbite, say to the American public, I'm going to give you a choice, okay? I'll go along to get along. I'll capitulate on stuff like my wife's school lunch programs and all the rest, and I'll give in on a lot of other things. But this is crazy. If you want me to go along with it, America, speak up and I'll do this, or say you're with me here, and this isn't something that I'll do at the end of a gun here, and I won't be extorted to do this. Could the president and the White House have shown more of a spine? You listen to Pelosi, they think they sold him out.
Well, what you just described is no definition anywhere of leadership. And the bar has been set so low. If we avoid a government shutdown, then that's apparently everybody doing their job. And I think that's a sad state of affairs. But if the left is upset and the right is upset, then clearly the middle has won the day. The question is how far either left or right is the middle that we're governing from and where things are getting done. And right now the middle is very far right on things like deregulation. To throw their hands up and say, well, I can't believe this happened, then Democrats years ago, now, and in the next 2 years should be running better campaigns with better candidates. And when you win, you get to decide what policy is going to look like. You can't, as we say, kill your parents and throw yourself on the mercy of the court as an orphan. But
it's a good line.
Yeah, but Obama.
That's rather harsh.
I'm rather harsh sometimes, Assemblywoman. I'm nice with you, but I'm not a nice guy.
But Michael, it's not just about who wins the elections.
Right.
It's also about who funds the elections. I mean,
Absolutely.
70-plus Democrats who voted for this bill had voted for something similar a couple of years ago, and the overwhelming majority of the yes votes out of the House yesterday take a substantial amount of money from Wall Street. Now, it's
both parties.
Right, absolutely. But it's an old card to play, but the money in politics may have guided last night's vote.
Wall Street was a huge victory, and I want to get from you a second what of a preview of the next 2 years this is, Andrew. But TJ, it wasn't just Bachmann. You heard a lot of conservatives, hardline conservatives, and the Tea Party folks who say, "Wait a second, what happened to our voice at the table?" They felt they got shut out. This was the establishment through and through. They got what they wanted, and there was a clear message from Boehner to the Tea Party: get along, go along. I don't care, but you don't have a seat at the table anymore. In effect, because they wanted them to do something about immigration reform, overreach of the president. I can go down the line. I don't think I'm reading too much into this. That this is a signal to the Tea Party: either get on board or you're on your own.
Yeah, and I think a great point here is that the middle did win the day, obviously, and the two extremes, I think, for the better, are being squelched a little bit. I think it's about time. Then again, we'll see who's actually in when everybody's sworn in and the Republicans control both houses. But to the Assemblywoman's point, also the fact that the president, he's got all this on his hands now. If anything, the Republicans might have walked away with a little bit of a victory in the sense that, well, everybody knows where this came from. It was the president's people and us in the room, so the Republicans don't own this alone. They own this along with the president.
But the Republicans had to keep the Tea Party with no voice in this process, because then the gains they made in purging their party from the far right in the midterm elections would have been rolled back.
I'm impressed they delivered it. We heard there was a lot earlier in the day yesterday, Andrew. This thing could have fallen apart. But for me, if we look at this as a precursor for the next 2 years, think about what we're saying at the table, that somehow this bill represents what the middle is. I don't think it does.
I agree with you.
I don't think this is representative where the public said yesterday, hey, Congress, before you leave for break, please, by a multiple of 10, let corporations contribute that much more to the process. And please, whatever you do, please do regulate derivatives. We can't live without this. That's the middle now?
No, I don't think so. I think that's the compromise that came together just to get the bill passed yesterday, and that's probably the last one of those we're going to see for a while. I also thought that yesterday's vote highlighted what I thought was an enormous influence of the far right and the far left in particular on the Democratic Party. I think we're going to see the Democrats moving further left, especially in the House.
Well, if you were right, then why didn't she whip? Nancy Pelosi chose not to whip votes yesterday once she saw Biden and the president making some calls. She decided to do the press conference and the rest, but she did the math. She knew where it was. She could have gone harder on this. She chose not to.
Well, first of all, she needs some alliance with the White House and can't afford to burn that bridge. Second of all, you had Maxine Waters, who was whipping 4 Democrats to try to vote no on the bill yesterday, so Pelosi didn't need to whip. She probably saw the math and probably saw where it was going, but also, you know, the Democrats, I think, would have taken a lot of the blame if the government had shut down last night as a result of this, and that's the third rail.
And the bank deregulation is potentially going to leave once people get wind of this and realize what happened. Again, we are not recovered. This is not the time to be reaching back to the way things were, to what got us into this position. There's a lot of people in really lousy situations, Democrat, Republican, all across the country. This false notion about we're doing better.
But we're talking
is
about
going to
this,
resonate.
and we're not talking about addressing food insecurity. We're not talking about urban decay and infrastructure. We're not talking about
no. Well, we're going
to
be talking about infrastructure, at least as it relates to much closer to home here a little bit later in the program, and want to bring you into our conversation here. So go to Facebook and Twitter and answer a question regarding this budget deal. Who do you think should be the most upset? Should it be progressives or conservatives by what went down last night and supposedly what will go down in the Senate before the end of tomorrow? All right, when we come back, as I said, we get closer to home. Governor Cuomo touting a plan that he says would save you from having to reach deeper into your pocket if you're a New Yorker to pay for tolls. We'll discuss that and much more when we return.